Here we go.
So there we go. Good. Well, I think Kyle from New York is going to join us. And at least he sent me a note earlier, somewhat to that effect. We'll see where it goes. George, do you have another lesson on evangelism that you can utilize? And we'll plan for here in the next week or so.
I walked away. What's going on, Royce?
I just asked you if you had another lesson on evangelism that you wanted to throw in.
Yeah, I can come up with something. Yep.
Well, crying out loud. I had my Bible sitting in my recliner just a minute ago, and I walked off and left it there. So y'all talk amongst yourselves. I'll be right back.
Harry, you look like you feel better.
I've turned a corner this week. I'm still having some issues, but Sunday I'm going to try to preach for the first time in 7 weeks.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you turned the corner. That's good. Good news.
And unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to attend my brother-in-law's funeral because I'm still not well enough to make a trip all the way out to Texas and then all the way back.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, sorry about that. Yeah, Nancy got it about the same time you did. But fortunately, hers was only like 3 days of fever and just no smell or taste. And just felt weak.
Yeah. Was she had she been vaccinated?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. We both
see. I'm hearing of it. I'm hearing of it more with people that have been vaccinated than I have people that are unvaccinated right now. Is my experience different than somebody else's experience? I wonder.
I don't know. It's totally confusing to me.
Well, that one felt.
Yeah,
that one felt like a lead balloon, didn't it?
Well, yeah, that's true. That's my state of mind most of the time.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I'll tell you this. There are a couple of people here that.
There's a lot of feedback and delay.
We got a couple of people here who've come down with it who were vaccinated, and they've been sicker than I remember other. Yeah, it's got to be that lag on the on my bandwidth, the pipe bandwidth. I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but so it's actually much better with a Chromebook. So that's what I'm using now. So anyway,
if the lag continues, it won't be worth recording.
Yeah, well, let's let it go. Let's see what happens with it. One of my lessons on evangelism, of the probably dozens of lessons that I have, ask the question, what's the importance of numbers? And do numbers matter in terms of evangelism? And if not, then how do we deal with the 3,000 were baptized and 5,000 men in Jerusalem, and the number of the saints multiplied, and when the number of the churches multiplied, Acts 6, there was a social problem that arose between the Grecian widows and the Hebrews, etc. And what about Hebrews 2:10, bringing many sons to glory? What about all those passages? What is the significance of those passages? And one thing that I do with this sentence, and I don't want to belabor the issue on this because most of us are aware of this particular point, is in the Acts record, just how the cause of the Lord did grow. As a matter of fact, there's some very strong statement. Many priests were obedient unto the Lord, for instance. I love the statement in Acts chapter 6 to which I referred just kind of passingly, in those days when the number of the disciples were multiplying. And that's a very consistent part of the story. You just can't miss the emphasis that seems to be upon the numerical growth of the church. And I've tried to address in some sense what is the significance of that, because that is an emphasis in Acts is beyond any question. So what is the place of numbers, or what do we make of it? What I try to do is to point out that while I don't believe that God is judging us based upon numbers, which would create a standard by which a gospel preacher is judged by the number of people that he baptizes, that's a standard which I flat reject. I think it's important for us, perhaps, maybe to judge ourselves in that regard and ask ourselves if we are personally meeting whatever may be the standard of results that we might expect. I would never allow an eldership to judge me based upon the number of people who are baptized, especially when often that is as much a part of whether the church receives new people and the church grows as a result of that, as it is upon my particular efforts. Besides that, of course, the fundamental principle that applies in this regard, we find some refuge in Paul's statement. I planted, Apollos watered, but God gives the increase. Ultimately, the increase is up to God. And I think we got to be careful that we don't jump in there and create an artificial standard for judging one another. But that does bring up the question of our own judgment of ourselves, and asking ourselves, what really is motivating us? Am I motivated by the necessity of growing the local congregation, or, as Larry and I have tried to point out, and the previous elders that we had here, Brother Hall, Brother Driscoll, Brother Garcia, you guys, Perry, I know you and George are both familiar with them. They realized that ultimately that standard was met only by God, and that while the growth of the local congregation is an immediate focus in our evangelism effort, in reality, what we're doing is growing the kingdom. And if that benefits other local congregations in the area, then that's just the way the cookie crumbles. We've taught people who were from Covina, for instance, and went to the church in Covina. We've taught people who were from Yucaipa and went to the church in Calamasa. We taught people who were from Riverside, and we sent them to the La Sierra church. And I'm not sure how many of those churches took advantage of us passing the prospect to them. But I do know that we have not been parsimonious in that regard. We've been very open and very free in making these names and these contacts, which we then help the church, help to other churches to take advantage of. And we've baptized people who've gone all over the United States. And every now and then I'll hear from somebody. We fed the church up in Utah, in the northern part of Salt Lake City. We fed churches in other areas of Southern California, other areas of California, even one as far north. Oh, I can't even remember the name of the town now. It'll hit me in just a second. Starts with a W. We've baptized people who were from several places, and we've tried to be sure that they received Payson. Payson, Arizona is another church. We sent two different names of individuals whom we baptized And in fact, the young man, it was a young married couple, the young man actually was really making a lot of progress in the Lord. And I was envisioning him as a deacon within probably 5 to 8 years, just getting him grounded in the Word, and a beautiful, supportive wife who was very involved in our ladies Bible class program with Claudia Aguilar, one of the members here, and Lee doing the teaching there. And you know, the church in Payson didn't follow up on that at all, and they ended up affiliating with one of the other churches there in town, one of the institutional churches, which I just thought was just, how do you let that happen? I mean, we made contact with them, we baptized them, and we got them grounded in the faith, and then they moved to a place they could have helped that church immensely, and church never followed up on it. As a matter of fact, I talked with them, I don't know, probably 4, 5, 6 months ago, and she said she never heard from the preacher over there, which is just a crying shame, but it is what it is, you know. But let me come back to that question then, is what is the point of numbers? Is there an emphasis that we need to be using? Is there a judging of ourselves that needs to take place? Have any of you ever considered that? Have any of you ever preached that point out of Acts, where you have successive passages over and over, 3,000 in Acts 2, the 5,000 men, the number of the disciples was multiplied, many of the priests were obedient to the faith. Numerous examples like that. So let me turn it over to you guys. Anything you want to mention in that regard? 5, 4, 3, 2,
okay.
1. Deafening silence.
I'll jump in. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
You'll bite? Yeah, I can hear you. I hope your voice is okay.
Yeah, in one way, you could suggest there's nothing wrong with counting numbers, since there's actually a book in the Bible that's actually called Numbers. And so, you know, God emphasized counting for that purpose. But then you go to the life of David, and you find that he actually got in trouble for counting, for doing a census. And so, yeah, there seems to be a right time to count and a wrong time to count. And I think that time depends upon the why you are counting. It seems like David was doing it because of pride. And it's very easy to, you know, get into, you know, how many people have you baptized versus how many people have I baptized, and so on and so forth.
I've baptized more people than you. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my best year, and see, this is where I might be falling in my own little trap. My best year, I baptized 19 people. My worst year, I baptized 0. I have prayed and I have cried in my prayers, and it's like, what did I do differently in the year where I got 19 people under the water versus when I got 0 people under the water? And I came away with the conclusion I didn't do anything differently. And I think that's also part of it when you do keep numbers, and I don't generally anymore. I mean, this last year we probably had around 5 baptisms, even during the pandemic. Maybe if you take 2 years, maybe it's 5 that way. And what did I do differently? What did I not do differently? And I've concluded that keeping numbers can be a prideful thing. It can be an encouraging thing when you're doing it humbly. But you also have to make sure that when you do, you have to give God the credit for why or how many have been saved, because he is the one that saves them.
Yep. We baptized 23 one week. I think that's the most we baptized in any 1 week from our evangelism effort. We were only able to secure 1 or 2 of those, and both of them ended up leaving us, going to other churches, one to Bakersfield, where last time I heard she was still faithful, and another one to Arizona, and the last time I heard she was still faithful. I think she went to the Phoenix area. Years ago, when I first started, A.A. McEnroe. George, did you ever know A.A. McEnroe in
No.
West Texas?
I remember the name.
Did you ever know of him? Yes. Yeah, Jess was real close to Brother McEnroe. Yeah, Brother McEnroe preached in Midland. He mentioned to me one time that in all of his 30-some-odd years of preaching at that point, he had never kept the name of a single person that he baptized. He said he knew God was keeping the books. And he said he knew preachers that he feared were reveling in the numbers of people that they baptized, bringing up before themselves certain names from time to time. And he said he never wanted to go down that route of the temptation to do that. And he used in the example in talking to me, and I was a teenager at the time, and he knew I wanted to preach, and he was working with me and providing opportunities for me to preach, and expecting me to memorize certain passages of scripture. It's kind of interesting. I still remember those passages in the King James Version or the American Standard Version, one of the two, or sometimes both, that he outlined for me, and I can still rattle them off with the same inflection and the same translation focus as he used. Was the example of the Apostle Paul, Crispus and Gaius. And I've often thought, yeah, but at least Paul knew those 2 names. But I think I started first year I preached, I never baptized. I don't remember his name, but I remember his dad's name. Isn't that odd? But I still remember that. But over the years, somewhere along the way, probably when I got about 12 or 15 names on there within the first couple of 3 years of preaching, I just stopped keeping those names. I think I kind of moved in the same direction as Brother McEnroe. Do you do periodic tabs on yourself? Keep tabs on yourself?
I have. Like I said, I've prayed and cried, and then re-examined to see if I was doing anything different, and realized I wasn't. And
yeah. Were you keeping the names of those that you baptized?
No.
Yeah.
Now, along that line, if you know Floyd Chapelier, whenever a young man would come up to him and ask, or to say to him, "I'm thinking about becoming a preacher," does anybody know what question Floyd would ask that young man?
I probably heard it, but I don't remember.
He said, "Go." He said, "Go ask the last person you baptized."
Yeah. You know what? There's not much of a way to refute that point, is there? Every now and then I'll hear some preachers say, I've probably not baptized 5 or 10 people in my whole career. Guys have been preaching 15, 20 years, and you wonder if, what are they doing that it's not producing the kind of result there needs to be. But here again, I just think we need to be careful that we don't create an artificial standard for judging the faithfulness of a man, when in fact it may be just simply that God is not supplying the increase for whatever reasons are appropriate to the divine mind. And I know who of us is capable of judging that.
Well,
I'm going to go back. I got to blow my nose
One
here.
thing I've heard from various people is various preachers that they've had support cut off from congregations to them because they haven't had enough baptisms. And in one way, yeah. And in one way, it's like you think, okay, well, it's very much a part of the work of a preacher. But in another way, I look at my own life, and there's been, like I said, 1 year I baptized 19, and there's been years where I baptized 0, and I wasn't doing anything differently. It was
that you could see.
Yeah.
That was to you measurable, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
you know, with regard to numbers, we had an element of folks here a few years ago that tried to squelch evangelism altogether, you know, by saying that, you know, you're you know, he pointed out the fact in Acts 2, for example, that when you look at that was a large number, but in comparison to the size of Jerusalem and the number of Jews there, it was still a small minority. And I mean, he was just trying to really squelch the idea. And the way I answered that is that our focus is not on numbers. Our focus is on souls and redeeming soul. I mean, every individual soul is precious in God's eyes and worth saving. You know, Jesus died for that purpose. And when we focus on that, the numbers take care of itself. But that's not really our focus or goal. And unfortunately, a lot of churches have done that. You know, they focus on numbers, and then they begin to throw out all kinds of gimmicks to get people in, which is not authorized by God and certainly not pleasing to Him. But anyway, that's kind of my thoughts. I think we need to focus on souls. Every individual soul is precious.
Yeah, one of the notes I've got on my post-it note here about the focus upon numbers is gimmicks used to support numbers, and I think that is a big question. I understand the point that the individual is trying to make there about in terms of the number of Jews in Jerusalem. You know, that's a very small number. But the reality of the matter is, you also have the fact that John the Baptist has been preaching the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Jesus has been preaching the kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's understandable that there would be a natural anticipation within Jerusalem for the coming of the kingdom in whatever sense the normal people would have understood that. And that's entirely separate from Paul's statement to the disciples that they were to remain in Jerusalem until power was given to them from on high. Did they talk about it in the meantime? What about the 120 that are mentioned in Acts chapter 1? Or is this information that the apostles are sharing with them? Look, we're kind of sitting in anticipation of something that God is going to do in His own good time. And perhaps they're even focusing upon the typical nature, the type-antitype relationship between Pentecost, for instance, and the first preaching of the gospel on that first Pentecost. You know, I think we probably need to see more of the Jewish context in which the apostles were anticipating the coming of the kingdom of heaven, or the kingdom of heaven is at hand preaching being done by John and by Jesus, and then by others who apparently were also teaching and baptizing. The disciples find a group of people, come to the Lord, and said, we found some people who were baptizing, and we forbade them to do so. And of course, the Lord answers that directly. You know, he's not against you, he's for you. So that needs to kind of work into the issue. No, go ahead.
I mean, it kind of related, but I've also heard folks say, if we have a congregation larger than 150, it surely can't be a sound church.
Yeah,
That can't be there's something wrong with that picture, you know what I mean? But anyway, go ahead, Royce. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, no, that's fine. I think that's an excellent point to make. One thing that I told the elders here when we first kicked off this thing, beyond what Larry and I were doing before, when we really got the elders to buy into this as a church thing and not just a Royce and Larry thing, or actually I probably ought to say Larry and Royce thing, because Larry was somewhat of the motivator for me in many respects, because I was getting pretty discouraged.
Royce, your sound went away.
We invite brethren in, and the significant expenditure, you know, our expenditure just for this is in excess of $10,000 a year, just for just what we're doing here. And it has been as high as $15,000 a year. Or at least that's what it's projected to be. I may address one aspect of that in just a minute. But one thing I told the elders was, this is like in October, before we kicked it off and really serious that next January, I told the elders, say, if this works, you guys are not prepared. Because I had tried for probably a couple of years to get the elders to convene a new Christians class. They were expecting me to teach a Bible class on Sunday morning. And so I needed a new Christians class because we were baptizing people, and I could, and they never really did that. And, you know, lo and behold, when this thing worked, they were really caught with their pants down. So there's another side of this numbers issue that I think is often missed. Perry.
Seems like,
Perry.
Yeah. Okay. Those that, you know, maybe have an objection to, you know, counting. I wonder if they have the same objection to counting the attendance on Sunday morning and posting it on the front board for everybody to see. It just seems like
they were consistent.
It just seems like it's like, well, you know, you can't count this, but you can count that. And I just sometimes wonder about the reasoning of people, because I have never heard very many, if any, people say it is wrong for a congregation to keep attendance.
All right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And post it
and
front.
and a lot of churches will often bring up the point that we're not baptizing so many people. We had an element here of people who were saying, we're giving away so many Bibles, we're spending so much money on Bibles, but we're not baptizing anybody out of it. Well, but the reality of the matter is we were baptizing people. I guess what they were doing was looking in a comparative way to say, well, look, if you're going to pass out 1,000 Bibles, you need to baptize 10% of the people, which of course is an unrealistic standard. So have any of you ever judged yourselves in this matter? Have you ever looked at yourself and said, you know what, I need to be having more Bible studies, I need to be baptizing more people, and so that it changed whatever may have been your habits or the particular parameters of your time in study, or the time that you devote to outside work, or your focus perhaps on outside ways. Anybody ever done that?
Yep.
Yeah. In fact, when I go,
the natural answer to yep is okay. Tell us about it.
when I go through periods of time, and it seems like it goes in, certain cycles, but when I go through times where I'm not having a Bible study with someone, is when I'm harder on me. I'm down on myself. Why?
I do the same thing.
And in fact, it's interesting. I kind of had that conversation last night with Nancy, and I said, I feel like we're dead, and she said, well, you need to come back next Sunday to our Bible class, and you'll realize there's a lot of life back there. So there are other aspects and things going on in the work that I sometimes need to be mindful of and not be hard on me or others.
Right. One thing that I found that I do is sometimes I'll get to reflecting on it, and I'll just say, you know what? I'm going down to Starbucks. I'm going to go get me a cup of coffee. Can I make a cup of coffee here on the Keurig cheaper? Yeah, probably about 10% of the cost, But I can go down to Starbucks and I can open my Bible, and within 5 minutes or so, somebody will say something like, hey, good to see somebody reading their Bible, or something like that. I find that a lot. And of course, those of you who worked with us out here, and when we go to Starbucks or to McDonald's or some of the other locations, you're familiar with that. I did the same thing when I was at Refugio, and this is a little town of 3,500 people. Only 7,000 take my Bible down to the Whataburger there, or to the Dairy Queen, and I could have a Bible discussion with somebody within a relatively short period of time. And sometimes I'll just get here and I'll just get kind of antsy, and I'll say, you know what, I'm heading out, and I'll ask Lee, you want to go with me? And she'll often say, no, you need time by yourself. Which I generally intuit as, no, I need the time away from you.
For me personally, I find it sometimes hard to. I think about what I'm doing and what I'm not doing, and I think everybody, like we've said, we can be, maybe we're too easy. Sometimes I'll have to admit that as far as consistently having personal Bible studies, I don't have those consistently. That doesn't mean I haven't had them or haven't sought them or looked for them at all. What you're doing on Sunday, you don't want to forget what you're doing on Wednesday, with visitors that come in. Or, for example, I wouldn't go around, well, look at me, I'm the model, but not everybody has done prison ministry. They haven't done it. And I did that, and that's where I've had more baptisms in the prison than I've had outside. Now, that's not to say that I do think about myself and I'll say, okay, what can I do that I'm not doing? That would be one thing that I think I can do more consistently, is Bible studies with people, arranging those. What I've done recently is just people that I go visit, or I see maybe my neighbor. I try to strike up a conversation about the Bible. It's not a planned Bible study. We didn't get our Bibles out. We didn't read them, but I talked to my neighbor about some spiritual topics. I talked to an atheist here, one of the children of one of our members, And I count those, even though they weren't planned, as evangelism, you know. So, but I think I can improve on the planned Bible studies, and that's something that I need to work on. But again, I try to look at, well, like even recently, there was a rumor going around about something here at our congregation, and anyway, I won't say too much about it, about me. And so I sat down to write down all of the stuff that I've been doing. I actually felt a little bit better about myself than what I did before that, because I had to kind of say, hey, what have I been doing? You know, I would even consider restoring people, you know, as part, maybe, I don't know if you call it evangelism, but it's still a work that we need to be doing. And so in my mind, I had restored somebody. They had not been attending faithfully for years, and I'd go visit them. They never really got back, but attending faithfully. But I called them on the phone right before they had a stroke. And I'm not saying that was God's providence or not. I'm just saying what happened. But I called them, an elderly lady, and she told me on the phone that she repented of not attending services all these years. She should have been there, and she was sorry, and she wanted forgiveness. And it was like within a day or two, she had a stroke. And so I consider that time that I spent with her, and I spent significant time with her, you know. So anyway, that's just kind of my story, but I think I can improve on it. But I don't want to think that's the only thing that I look at and determine whether I'm doing my job or not. You know, there are lots of things. I think even George brought it up. And now that I got kids, I have Bible studies every day with my kids. You know, their souls it's a different thing, but they're just as important as anybody else out there. And so every day we do stuff with them. We talk about God. At the end of the day, it's just, anyway, those are my thoughts.
Here's an idea that might shock a few congregations. Have you ever worked with a congregation that you weren't really that excited to do evangelism?
Well, I don't know what you're. Go ahead, Barry.
Have you ever worked with a congregation where you were not that excited to do evangelism because of the condition of the congregation? You didn't want to bring somebody in.
No.
I have.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, yeah. You know, I was gonna say no, but the reality of the matter is that's exactly what happened with me at Peabody Avenue in Memphis, Tennessee, where I first started preaching, and I was still working at the time. And I made contact with I knocked the doors in the community, and I made contact with a young couple. She was African and Cuban, so she was Caribbean African, and he was a black guy. Nice couple, really sweet people, like 2 doors down from the church building. And I mentioned to the brethren one time, they used to have congregational meetings about every second week. Somebody would bring up something. Hey, we need to talk about something. And so they'd have congregational meetings. And I just mentioned some of the people that I'd been talking to. And I said, I met this really sweet couple a couple doors down, and I've been able to study with them a couple of times. And I'm hoping maybe to be able to see them sometime in the next week or so. And I was queried about who they were. And so I just mentioned that she was from Cuba and was of African ancestry, and he was African American. I had one of the brethren there told me, if you invite into here, I'll invite him out. Well, I was just shocked. And Lee and I talked about it, and I went back that next week, and I told the brethren, I said, this is what was told me. And, interestingly enough, I don't remember that anybody objected to that brother saying that. Nobody turned in their seat around to him and said, I can't believe you said something so ungodly or whatever. And I just told him, I said, you just invited us out the door. because I can't stay on that basis. I'll not be told who I can teach and who I can baptize and whether I can use the baptistry here to baptize somebody who you think his skin is not as clean as your skin. And I left that work as a result of that. So answer to the question is, yeah, probably. Although that wasn't really my intent. My intent was to try to help the church grow there. And I will tell you now, I wouldn't tolerate that kind of thing at all under any circumstance. I would clip that so fast. I would answer it directly from the pulpit. Of course, I'm also stupider now than I was then, but
along those same lines, a congregation can be so messed up where the preacher is constantly having to put out fires. He doesn't have time to do evangelism.
right.
I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was hoping that the congregation where he is currently, he's not a preacher, that they would stop having the preacher preach on Sunday nights. That way he would have more time to do evangelism. And I love that attitude.
Yeah, I love that attitude too.
The whole point is congregations don't understand.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Perry.
Congregations don't understand that they can influence or deter evangelism by the way that they treat one another and the way that they treat the preacher. So I'll shut up now.
Right. Well, I think you're right about that. And I think it also comes back to whether an eldership is ready to pick up the responsibility to teach all things whatsoever I've commanded you. Where that didn't exist, what ended up happening here was I ended up having to shift my focus away from another evangelism effort, which we had coming up in 2 months, in order to try to create a young people's or a young Christians or new Christians class. And because the reality of the matter is you can't just go and make disciples and baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit without teaching them also those other things that I've commanded you. So it had to be done. And, we still have somewhat of that problem right here. Larry's more focused on evangelism than he is upon on the teaching them all things whatsoever I've commanded you. And so consequently, I have to do that. And yet Larry's still working. He's still gainfully employed. And it's a 24/7 job. And he's often called away on emergencies and things like that. So if that is done at all, it largely falls into my lap. And I'm not fussing about Larry in that regard because I understand where he's coming from. That's really where my focus is upon evangelism. But somebody has got to do that work also. And if other elders are not equipped to do that, then the preacher who's facilitating the obedience is going to have to do that. That's the only way the numbers whom you have baptized become numbers that benefit the local congregation. So.
On Sunday afternoons, I teach a new convert class, and it'd be wonderful if we had elders who were able to do that. Because it builds relationships, not just time. Because it doesn't really take that much time. It's a half hour every Sunday afternoon to 45 minutes. For me, the point wouldn't be time, it'd be building relationships.
Right. Well, I had that in Irving, Texas. The elders at Irving were really good about convening Bible studies, especially Don Brazel, who died not long ago, well, a couple of years ago. But a good man. He struggled with his own problems in some respects that I'm not going to waste time on, but it's kind of an interesting thing because my little brother, came to live with us for a period of time, and I told him, of all of the girls in the church, thou mayest surely date, but in the day in which thou datest the elder's daughter, thou shalt surely die. And what did he do? He married Don Brazel's daughter, who has been a wonderful sister-in-law down through the years. But Don was really good about following up. And as a matter of fact, a good example would be my own mother-in-law. We had tried for a long time to bring her to knowledge of the truth, and she was impeded by the fact she knew her father, who was incidentally a really, really good man. He was Nazarene, and grandma just couldn't get past, if I'm baptized, that puts my father in hell. And we tried to tell her, look, that's not your stick to whittle. And Lee would tell her mom, Mom, if Grandpa is in hell or destined for hell, there's nothing you can do to change that. Nobody can cross that great gulf and take one from one place and put him into the other. If he's saved, that's in the mind of God, and you can't remove him from there. But what would Grandpa want you to do if you knew something about the truth? And that helped her. But what really converted Grandma was Don Brazel coming knocking on the door one day and saying, Mary, well, Lee entered the door. He said, yeah, Lee, is your mom here? And, well, yeah, she is. And he said, Mary, I just wanted to sit down and talk to you about your soul. And he sat there, and I think I was kind of on a meeting, I think, that week. And my wife called me and she said, listen, as soon as you get back, Grandma wants to be baptized. I said, whoa, that's great. What did you do? She said, I didn't do it. Don Brazel did it. So then after she was baptized, we'd baptized about 4 or 5 people within, I don't know, a few weeks before that. And Don was teaching a new Christians class, and he came and studied with Grandma at the house for 3 or 4 weeks to get her up to speed, and then pulled her into that new Christians class. And Don was directly responsible for those people. I always appreciated that. Eddie Beard was the same way at Venice, California. Let me think. Boy, the elders at Valley Circle Boulevard, I couldn't get those guys to do anything. And that ended up being a very troubled situation anyway. But it's what it is. I agree with Perry. You know, it's wonderful to have elders on whom you can depend so that you can do the work of evangelism.
We're very blessed here in that regard. In fact, the young lady we baptized, I think I've already told you, what we did, we had 6 lessons for a new convert, and we've selected 6 different families, and each one of those families took her into their home and had a Bible study with her. And it's really been good for her because she developed a relationship with each of them. Got to know them. And the young lady she's still hungry, boy. She's a sweetheart and wanting to know more and more. And I think a lot of that was due to the fact that, you know, she got to know some of the brethren here. So.
Right. I think that's a wonderful idea. I love that idea. I haven't done that exactly. I like that idea of 6 lessons, and each one of 6 families prepares only that one lesson in order to study with. I really like that idea. Actually, I was going to do that before, but I was just kind of see if any of you guys did think of it. I love that idea. I'm a little surprised that I never thought. It's kind of obvious, you know, like loser. But I love that idea. I really, really love that idea. So I gotta take advantage of that. I got a lesson coming up this Lord's Day. We're doing a prayer. What we do is the week before we do an evangelism effort, we have a day of prayer. So since our evangelism effort is beginning on the 19th, this coming Sunday is a day of prayer. And what I try to do in that regard is I put together a little short lesson. And I was going to talk about our evangelism effort. I think I'm going to shift it over to that idea and talk about the people who say, well, I don't really have a lot that I can do in evangelism. And I'm going to point out, well, here's one thing you can do right there. That's actually a really good idea. Thanks for that, George. I'm gonna change what I was gonna do. I love that idea.
You can tell them you got the idea from an Aggie.
Oh, man, I can't tell them that. Although out here people don't know what an Aggie is, so maybe I can get away with it.
In Jamaica, they don't.
Let me come back to something that Jason was referring to in terms of judging yourself about Bible studies. Are you doing enough Bible studies and you're feeling guilty about it? I'm not teaching enough Bible studies or whatever. There's never been a time in the over 50 years that I've been preaching in which it was more difficult to get and keep a continuing Bible study, period. I can say that hands down. It doesn't happen anymore hardly. I don't know. Are you guys experiencing the same thing where you are?
Well, you have to work with schedules because people are busy, if that's what you mean. Sometimes I find that I have to work around their schedule. Maybe it's going to be Tuesday night this week, but then next week it may not be until Saturday. So you kind of have to be flexible.
Right.
Bye, Brian.
But you're still able to get some continuing Bible studies?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with that one person.
Right.
Their work schedule and, or if they're a college student, different things going on in their life. But if you work around the schedule, you can usually kind of get it where it'll, more than one.
I wonder if there's a little bit of,
right.
I don't know how to say this, but there may be some perceptions about such a thing that, well, like, for example, people, I'm not saying that everybody's prideful, but they're like, well, why do we need a personal Bible study? There may be some misconception, there may be some perceptions about that. Why do you need to teach me, so forth and so on? I don't know, but it does seem like, though, that there's a lot of structured things that go on, and maybe we're just not, maybe we're not. And what I mean by that is, like, on a college campus, I hear of these churches of Christ that they set up these little groups for college age students, and they have ongoing Bible studies, but they're large. They're it's like a club type thing, and it's almost like everything's
like the Christian club or the Bible club.
Yeah, it's got to be marketed properly, and all that stuff. But when it comes to these little, just, hey, let's study the Bible together one-on-one, I don't know. I think you're right, Royce. I mean, it just doesn't happen like it used to. And that was
I have run into that, Jason, on campus. We would advertise a Bible study, and someone would walk up and say, "So what's this all about? Where's y'all have a group meeting?" And I'm going, No, I'm just interested in studying with you. I'd like to meet you somewhere in a coffee shop. And oh, okay. And then they walk off. So there's
we've confronted the same thing at Valley College. The Bible club there is controlled by a Oneness Pentecostal group, and they pack that Bible study with all of the members from their church. I don't think there's probably not more than 2 or 3 young people there, college age students. They're all gray haired or bald. and they are all rank oneness Pentecostals because they bring up every point that's brought up is brought back to oneness Pentecostal teaching. They clearly are shills that are placed there, and yet at Valley College you cannot have a club that does not involve members of the student body. So somewhere along the way, they are able to either bring some of their people into that Christian club to be the sponsors for that club, or they're just snowing everybody and they're remaining in control over it. But I tried several times to throw in with that group, even when we had students that were at Valley College, and it just. I just was never able to do that. Now, Ethan Longhenry has been able to do that at West LA College. He has, I think they call it the Christian Club over there, and they have several members of the church in Venice who were members of that club. And Ethan has been able to get a continuing presence at West LA College. He had something similar to that at UCLA for a period of time, but I haven't heard recently about the UCLA thing. I probably ought to call Ethan and ask him about that. So anyway, yeah, I just think this numbers issue is something that we probably ought to consider and probably use as somewhat of a target point for our own efforts. I would really hate to see it become so much of a focus of a local congregation that the church begins to judge its success with the gospel, with whether they're teaching and baptizing people. But the reality of the matter is, you don't grow a church without teaching and baptizing people. I mean, that's how you grow a church. So somewhere along the way, there is a measuring stick. I'd like to think that we, as gospel preachers, are those who are using that to help us make wise and responsible decisions. I know Kevin is with us, probably driving. He's not had us on the video there, but I would really be interested in Kevin's perception as a longtime member of the church. And thinking back about our association at Orange and the work in the circle back when we were working the circle at Orange with Norm and Bill Aldridge and 2 or 3 others there. Do you any input you want to throw in on that, Kevin? Are you listening to us? Apparently not. Yeah, he's muted. Kevin, if you're hearing me, be sure and turn your microphone on. No, he's not hearing me. Anyway, thanks for your participation and some insight onto this. One of you have some lesson on evangelism? George, if you have something? Jason, yeah. Let me throw it to you. Do you have a lesson that is somewhat evangelistic in its nature that you can prepare for a couple of weeks ahead down here?
Yeah, I can do it in 2 weeks.
What?
All right.
I'll do it. Let me see. I'll do it how about the 24th?
Sounds fine to me.
Okay.
All
right.
Jason, are you not available next week? Are you tied up?
I could probably do it next week.
Why don't you defer me to the 24th? I've already done one, and next week is going to be really, really busy. Really, really busy with us.
That's fine. Yeah, I can do that.
Every evening next week. So
yeah,
it would be helpful to me if I could defer to the 24th.
Yeah, the week of the 24th is the week of our evangelism, and I'm going to be really, really busy also. But I'm hoping to get those that are here with us working. Fred Singleton is coming from North Carolina or South Carolina? Which one? Perry, do you know?
Don't know him, so it's probably South Carolina.
Okay, it may be South Carolina, but somewhere I got in the mind is North Carolina. Mark Reeves is coming from Long Beach. Benjamin Munoz is coming from Hueytown, Alabama, or at least he's planning on it. He's still running some things, trying to get some things free with his work there. Let me think. Jack Critchfield was supposed to be with us from Indio. He had to back away. Some kind of a personal issue came up and he wasn't able to. So we've been kind of scrambling to get people here for this evangelism thing. This has been a much more difficult one. So anyway, hope to get you guys, one or more of you guys back. Perry, I hope you're feeling better.
I am, but I'm exhausted from just doing this, so I'm going to go take a nap.
Well, yeah, I can see that. As a matter of fact, I can still pick it up in your voice and your demeanor. You're not the active Perry that we're used to seeing. So, but I hope you're okay.
Royce, I while we were on, I tried posting the video on Facebook, and now they're saying from last week, and now they're saying it's processing. So,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I guess they got to vet it or something, and then I don't know.
Well, it takes some time for it to go up.
Okay, so hopefully it goes
And the
up.
upload. Okay,
What
All right.
video, Jason?
that was from last week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I ended up recording it, Perry, because I recorded it, and then I failed to put it up, but then my memory was, of course, jogged this morning. So while I was on, I said, let me get it up now so that I, remember it. So
I'll stop recording and then I'll post it on the challenges. I'll talk
Okay.
to you guys later.